Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. I'm your host, Riha, and today we have an exciting conversation lined up with Courtney King, Senior Vice President of People and Culture at BeatBox. So, as you know, when companies scale, one of the toughest challenges is keeping the culture intact. So, in this episode, we are going to dive into how recognition plays a pivotal role in maintaining authenticity and connection during periods of hypergrowth, and most importantly, how HR and leadership can lead the charge in preserving the company's core values. So, welcome to the show, Courtney. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Riha. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. I was super excited for the opportunity.
We are delighted as well. So, to kick things off, can you briefly take us through your professional journey so far? I mean, our listeners and I are eager to learn about your journey.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the Senior Vice President of People and Culture at BeatBox Beverages. I have been with BeatBox Beverages almost 4 years. And prior to that, I've spent my 20 plus years career in the human resource discipline. I've worked for numerous companies, some large public companies, but also, or I would say in majority, smaller, mid-sized to smaller private equity companies. So I got my start in the human resource discipline just simply by chance. And how that happened is I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and in my early 20s, I had the privilege, with assistance from my grandparents, to be the owner and operator of a restaurant franchise. And during that time, so I was in college. I quit college, at least temporarily, to kind of get my PhD in life. And so I ran the businesses. I was working front of house, back of house. And during that time, I noticed I had a real affinity for these things that I now know are human resource related task and strategy. And so I'm definitely shortening this story, but when I sold the businesses, I went back to school and I changed my major. I was a biology major. I was definitely, I had a love of the sciences, but I changed my major and got my undergrad and then graduate degree in human resources. And so that's how I got started. And that gave me enough credibility to get my foot in the door with the first HR job. And then, things just progress from there. So that's an interesting piece of information as to how I got my start in human resources.
Great, Courtney. That's such an inspiring venture, Courtney. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. So now, with your permission, I would like to delve into our topic further, shall we?
Yeah, I would love to.
Great. So, scaling a business rapidly can be quite exciting, you see, but maintaining that very core of its culture throughout the process can be a significant challenge. So, why do you really think companies struggle to preserve their culture during periods of hypergrowth? What do you think?
So, too many treat culture as an afterthought. So, it's something that they say they will fix when they hit a certain milestone, such as like, we'll work on that when we hit 100 or 75 employees or whatever it may be. But by that point, your culture has already started to slip and it's too late. I also think that in hypergrowth, it creates pressure for systems and speed. And if no one owns the culture, then other more urgent things crowd out the need to focus on culture. And one of the last things that I think about, just to illustrate culture and addressing culture early, when I started at BeatBox, I remember very distinctly a story that my boss and one of our co-founders told me. She said, so as many of the listeners may know, BeatBox is a Shark Tank company. And Mark Cuban invested in the brand. And I'll never forget when Amy said to me, as I was interviewing and after I was ultimately chosen for the role, when our three co-founders asked Mark Cuban, like, what is next for us? What should we focus on? He told them that now it was time to bring in someone whose job was dedicated to creating, shaping, and growing the culture. And just to let the listeners know, we had less than 40 employees at that time. Okay. So we were very intentional about not treating culture as an afterthought or waiting until the organization was too big to try to, fix something that had already started slipping, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Courtney, the things and the example of BeatBox really serves here as an example. I mean, how we should really proceed ahead with the culture. And, it's more about that delicate balancing act between the new processes and the systems, right? Basically, people are more tempted to prioritize speed over authenticity. And that is what organizations tend to overlook, that very elements that made the culture special in the first place, right? But your example serves differently. BeatBox really stands out in that.
No doubt. I think BeatBox, I know BeatBox has the best company culture that I've ever had the privilege to lead and be a part of.
Great. So moving ahead, so as companies tend to grow, it's very easy for recognition to be sidelined in favor of other priorities, yes? However, recognition is that one critical element in preserving the organization's culture. So what do you think, what is the role of the recognition in helping organizations maintain that authenticity as they scale high?
So recognition is your company's culture in action. It shows what the company truly values and not what's just written, in a handbook or on a plaque on a wall for those of us that are in office. I also think that it builds trust. Employees believe the culture is real when they consistently see peers and leaders recognized. And then lastly, authentic recognition reflects the brand voice and values here at BeatBox. So it's not stiff, it's not overly corporate, it's fun and totally in tune with how we show up as a company.
Okay, that's great. That really thing about brand voice and values being reflected through recognition, that's something to be noted, I really think, for me and for the listeners out there. Right? Recognition really serves as the cornerstone for maintaining that connection and maintain the engagement throughout the workforce, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So now as we move ahead, HR, as you know, HR plays a key role in shaping the company's growth strategy to ensure how the organizations expand, how their values become human-centered, okay, and intact. So, what kind of strategies can HR really use to balance structure and scalability while also keeping in touch and maintaining that human and authentic culture?
So first, I would say that companies should anchor every process to why. So structure should enable people and not stifle them. And understanding the why is a basic tenet of adult learning. You want someone to do something, you want an adult to do something, they need to understand what the importance of that thing is to have buy-in.
Yes.
Also, I think building light framework. So think guidelines versus very rigid rules. So teams have the freedom, but again, freedom with guardrails, and you adjust and modify those as necessary, but not so often that processes change with the wind and without intention and a good reason. And then lastly, I say use tech to automate systems and scale HR operations, and that frees HR for the human work like coaching and listening and onboarding and training, all those things that, technology can't replace.
That's a really great point you made there. HR, since, HR is the backbone of both that scalability and the cultural preservation. So it's all about creating the systems, you see, that work without really compromising the personal touch, like you just mentioned, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's easy said, but I think it is something you have to be very careful and intentional when doing. And like we said, not forgetting the important touch points for human interaction. That's how you're going to build rapport with employees and build relationships with them. And that's the foundation of your culture as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as we move ahead, so growth brings new systems and processes, but it's also essential that you remember that efficiency should never overshadow people. So, as systems and processes evolve, how do you balance that efficiency with maintaining a people first culture?
So I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. So we have to gut check processes.
Yes.
Does it make life easier for the employees or just your HR team? And does it help the business achieve the business goals?
Yes.
Automate those repetitive tasks. But like we just said, keep the high touch moments personal. And a good example of that is for every birthday that an employee has and every work anniversary, we send them a handwritten card and a gift card in the mail. And I've evaluated that system or that process many times with my team and the greater organization, but I cannot tell you how many people, when they receive that, they are so pleasantly surprised. And, we get a lot of thanks, meaning the people and culture team get a lot of thanks and recognition. Really makes people feel special to get a handwritten note because, that's kind of a dying art. People don't get things in the mail anymore that aren't either a bill or junk mail.
Exactly.
And then the last thing I think about is collect feedback as you scale. Employees must flag when efficiency starts to feel transactional, but with the following caveat. So you must have built the trust with the employees to know that they can be honest, like safe space, transparency, and B, that the company will actually do something with the feedback that employees provide.
Absolutely. That's a great point about that personal touch and the instance you stated about your company, about the handwritten notes. It really stands out. That truly shows what a sense of personal touch is about the people's first culture. It's at the end of the day, it's all about the employees that are the ones who make the systems work, right? So employees should be happy in the first place, and right.
Absolutely. Happy employees, engaged employees do their best work.
Absolutely true. So, leaders have always been pivotal in incorporating recognition and shaping the culture to align with. Now, according to you, in this rapidly growing company, how should leaders and managers model recognition and set the tone for the culture?
So recognition has to cascade from the top. So if leaders kind of start that process and model it, managers follow, and employees believe it. Also, recognition should be specific and tied to tangible things like success on a project and the significant impact of the project on the business, not simply good job. Those type of sentiments tend to have less meaning for employees.
Yes.
And then normalize recognition in team meetings, in your Slack, during your company all hands meeting, so it becomes a daily rhythm and not a special event.
Absolutely. These instances really demonstrate the true power of recognition that lies not only as an annual event or something, but on a daily basis. And leadership here plays a really important role, right? So when leaders really or genuinely value recognition, it creates that kind of ripple effect throughout the organization, as is reflected in your organization. So, moving on, you see, real world examples often provide that level of best insight into how the recognition practices can really drive the meaningful engagement. So, can you share a specific example where recognition practices has helped strengthen employee engagement at BeatBox?
Sure. So I have several, but I'll start with one, and if we
Sure.
have a little time, I can share some more. But we have a company summit every year. We bring all of our employees together. The summit is really cultural in nature, and we're looking to strengthen relationships and bonds between employees. But at that summit, we have peer nominated awards. And so employees can nominate their peers for a variety of different awards that we have. And one of those awards is the Failing Forward Award. And so for this award and any of the other award categories, the employee that has the most nominations wins. We bring that employee to the stage. We read the nominations from their peers, and then we present them with a golden BeatBox. And I think that tying that recognition to something like the Failing Forward Award, we create a safe space for employees to fail, because we know that innovation comes out of failure. And so we've got this opportunity with dual purpose. The employee is getting recognition for, again, the award category, and we're reinforcing things that are important to the business at that time as well. Another example I can think of, we do hiring manager of the quarter. So in short, our talent acquisition team tallies up scores and awards a hiring manager of the quarter. That is the hiring manager that has best followed the process for an easy, maybe I shouldn't say easy, but for the best outcome in hiring a new employee. And so we do that to recognize and reinforce good practices. And it's a benefit for everyone. The hiring manager gets recognition. My talent acquisition team gets a better hiring process, and the candidate experience is improved, or is a great experience.
I must say, Courtney, this Failing Forward Award that you mentioned just now, I mean, that really has stood out. This particular recognition, it really gives that space to employees to really stand out, to experiment, basically. There's no fear of
Yeah,
failing, right? So that
right.
very thing is something that motivates them to experiment and go beyond and think out of the box. So at the end of the day, like, what if I fail? No matter what, I'll get awarded for, even trying it out. So, that motivation level goes a level high, right?
Sure. And, it creates that safe space for, like you said, creativity.
Yeah.
And yes. So, and another simple thing to think about, we create, like, every Friday,
Yes.
employees can shout out another employee in Slack. We tie it back to company value. So they select a company value, and then they recognize how that team, I say team member, it can be any employee, it doesn't have to be on their team, has exemplified a value that reinforces the company values as well as provides engagement and recognition for the employee being nominated. So those are just a few ideas that we found that work well with us. And I think you just have to figure out what makes sense for your culture.
Exactly. Absolutely. These are some true examples that has really helped your company. And I'm sure the listeners out there has something to learn from this. And I mean, the leaders out there, HRs out there, they can really look forward to these instances and actually implement in their organizations for the better run, you see?
Yeah, it even allows me to innovate, right? Like I've had some failed ideas with engagement and recognition, but the good news is like it's okay to fail.
Yes.
And I take my learnings and we move on, and hopefully we come up with something even better.
Absolutely. So true. Great, Courtney. Okay.
Thank you.
So, looking to the future now, so what should these fast-growing companies focus on to ensure their culture remains that strong and scalable? What do you think?
Bake
Like you have given an example, but apart from that, anything?
Okay. Bake culture into systems early. Culture is not a bolt-on for later. Invest in leadership development, because remember, your managers are culture carriers. And then keep your culture evolving. So when I think about BeatBox, what worked for engagement and recognition and just our culture in general, like what worked when we were 40 employees doesn't work today when we're almost 300. So core values your core values can scale if you continuously listen and adapt. So again, that culture has to ever evolve, and then your staying true to your core values will allow you to scale that culture as long as you listen and adapt. And then I guess the last thing I would say is just to reinforce, don't expect the culture to be the same. A lot of people, you hear, how do we keep the culture intact, or how do we keep the culture, how do we make sure it doesn't change? And the truth is, if it doesn't change, then something's broken. There's no way your culture can be the same when your headcount 10x's.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, this thing about, things change, culture will change, but yes, staying true to your core values, that is what can, you know, bring the change, and that's how you can really stick up, or that's how you can really keep your culture intact. I mean, like, not to give it all up, but something, how you began with it, you can just stay through it, at least with the core values, right?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so Courtney, we have finally come to the end of the podcast. So before winding it up, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights, Courtney. And it's been a pleasure hearing such interesting perspective on how companies can attain that growth without really losing their culture, and how recognition becomes a central contributor here. So we really appreciate your time and your expertise, and I'm sure our listeners are heavily inspired by your expertise and are walking away with a wealth of information to ponder.
The pleasure is mine. Again, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I hope that my experience and what I've learned in this journey can help the listeners as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found today's conversation as enlightening as we did. So until next time, take care and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast YouTube channel for new episodes.